you. And I have read this, and I didn't put it into AI to read it. I actually read it. It's very, very good, so it's well worth a read. So we have a break coming up, but before then, we have Nick Maynard. Nick? If you could come to the stage and introduce your panel and also bring your panelists up to the stage, and we'll get going on this last talk before we have a little break.
Of course. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here with you all. So we are talking about optimizing retail payments and designing a streamlined and customized checkout experience. Obviously, payments is evolving rapidly, and that gives us an opportunity to really evolve the way the checkout experience works. So lots to explore. So that's enough of me to start with. Let's get the panelists up here and let's start the conversation. So please join me on stage. Great. Okay, cool. So great to have you all join me on stage. There are a lot of people on stage, so let's start with some introductions. I'll go first very, very quickly. I'm Nick Maynard. I'm VP of FinTech Market Research at Juniper Research. We're a UK-based analyst house that covers the payments market and things like e-commerce payments in a lot of depth. So pleasure to be here. Let's go along the line.
So thank you very much, James Lloyd.
But Feed's Eye, do you know?
Am I hearing that? Are other people hearing that? It's not a voice in my head? Yeah. Great. So James Lloyd, I lead international for a company called JustPay. If you haven't heard of us, we're about 13 years old, founder-led company, headquartered in Bangalore, where we orchestrate or facilitate about $1 trillion annual on behalf of the likes of Amazon, Google, and others. That's about 300 million transactions a day. And we're building out the international capability now to serve merchants with what our founder would describe as hard payment problems at scale.
Great. Thank you, James. Next.
Hi, I'm Rawani Hewa. I'm Director of Payments at Starling Bank. It's week 5 for me in this role. It's still quite new. So I'm looking after payments across the banks, that's acquiring, issuing, and anything in between, like FPS and backs. My background is mainly acquiring and loyalty, so that's probably where I'll be speaking to most at the moment, but I also provide an issuer perspective today.
Yes. Great. Madalena.
Yes, I'm Madalena. I work for Decathlon, which is the sports brand and the retailer. I lead gift cards and prepaid rewards from the product side. My background is in helping global merchants to deliver products and customer experiences enabled through payments, whether this is optimizing the checkout, the payment experience, and now for the retailer, I help growing the loyalty and customer acquisition through these prepaid payment instruments. So thank you for inviting me.
Great. And Yadari.
Hi, I'm Yadari. I work for IKEA, based out of Netherlands. My background is mainly fintech and the e-banking, but I started in the payments world about 5 years ago. I work as a senior product owner in the e-com side, working mainly on the back-end integrations with our payment service providers and acquirers.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Jacob, we've just seen you.
You have indeed. So I'm probably quite tired of my voice. I'm Jacob, Chief Revenue Officer at Bridge. Ultimately, I lead the go-to-market function for Bridge, which is a payment orchestrator aiming to provide modular enterprise-grade technology to support a number of enterprise merchants, both in the UK and internationally.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, all of you, for those intros and for keeping them short. Always a miracle when that happens. What I like about this panel is that we've got such a great mix of different perspectives. We've got payments, we've got retailers, and we've got everything in between. So I think we're going to cover a lot of great ground and have a really good discussion. So let's go straight into that. We're all of us on this panel are on a different journey with payments. What has been your strategy to date to enhance the checkout experience? And maybe if we start with Yadari on this one.
Yeah, so in IKEA, as everyone knows, it started as a brick and mortar. So we specialized in checkout experience in store. So I'm going to talk external. When e-com started, everyone knows the great boom of COVID, where we had to be online. IKEA actually started concentrating a lot on building their online space, their website, their app. But one of the things, since I come more from the fintech, because in addition to the experience, making it frictionless, and at the same time not like conceding in anything security-wise, we are also focusing a lot on build once, serve many. So we work a lot with the e-com and we do all the integrations. But one of the things that we found, and I think a lot of other industries also could relate to this, is that given that we built our in-store, our brick and mortar first, we are finding ourselves duplicating a lot of the same functionality in e-com versus the in-store. So we want to make it as seamless as possible for the customer. And I think we've heard that with every panelist, and we're going to keep on hearing it all throughout the day. But one of the things that we want to do is make it easier for us to develop, build, put out there. And once we build it for e-com, as frictionless and with most of the transparency and security that our customers deserve, we also want it to extend it to the in-store experience or wherever the customer wants to meet us, the agentic AI and any other experience where they want to buy IKEA.
Excellent. How about Jacob next, your perspective on this one?
Yeah, I mean, we work across a number of industries, and you know, one of the industries that we work quite heavily in is gaming and gambling. And one of the interesting things about that industry is people return to deposit many, many times if they're loyal to that brand across a year. So one of the things that we've started to build into that experience to really make it personal is showing the right payment method at the right time for that customer and prompting them to deposit in the most optimal way for them. So this, for example, might be both customer experience led. So when a customer comes on and they're from the Netherlands, you show them Ideal, for example, as their top payment method. Or it might actually be risk led as well. So you might say, well, we find that when people sign up with an offer, they're typically more likely to be a fraudulent player. So we'll only offer them a subset of the payment methods which are low fraud risk or we can control more appropriately. So one of the things we're quite focused on doing at the moment is personalisation in checkout, and that's not just building the checkout, it's providing the back-end software that they can show the right payment method at the right time based on parameters they know about their customers. So we're really, really at the moment focused on ensuring that the payment journey that someone goes through is optimal for either them or the merchant to ensure it's a safe transaction, but more appropriately, it's the right transaction for everyone.
I think just to add to that as well, it's a big sticking point when my previous role, we were at Go Cardless, and our open banking journeys caused a lot of friction. I think Helen did a great session on open banking to actually increase user adoption on open banking, because Go Cardless has this massive network effect. They've actually seen quite a lot of bank accounts through direct debits. We could actually understand the customer and who they banked with. So when you put your email address, it actually comes up as, oh, Rouhani is actually a Starling Bank customer. Do you want to go through the Starling Bank open banking journey? So it actually provides a lot more trust at the checkout, which is also very important.
Yeah, great perspective. And yeah, Helen's session on open banking was very interesting in that regard, for sure.
Yeah, and maybe even just on that, because I think it's almost a trite observation to say that all of these things are very regional, but it's true, right? And the reason I say that is we've obviously come up in India for the first kind of 10 years of the company building on top of UPI. In fact, we're the first kind of folks to build services on top of UPI that we run Amazon Pay today, Google Pay, and so on. The reason we've got teams now in Sao Paulo, as you can imagine, is building on top of Pix. In Europe, we're trying to solve for very different issues as regards PSD2 and ultimately PSD3, right, in terms of the customer experience and some of the personalization and so on and so forth. So I know it's a very obvious thing to say, but these kind of regional differences are, of course, there. But equally, I think the opportunity can be for global merchants to learn from each, from an experience perspective in particular, and apply it elsewhere, right? And I think even the schemes themselves, obviously we're working with Visa and Master on some of the kind of click-to-pay with passkey solutions. Some of that is actually learning from some of these account-to-account implementations elsewhere from a customer journey perspective and applying it. So, you know, it's all pretty interesting, and it's all kind of ever-evolving, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Madalena, is this sort of
Yeah.
resonating with what you're
Yeah.
seeing at Decathlon?
Definitely, what Yodari mentioned about the IKEA situation, I think that's also very similar with what the challenges we're experiencing at the Decathlon. Obviously, we're a sports brand and a retailer, and we are present in 70 countries around the world and have 2,000 stores. And the checkout and the payment experience is obviously needed to evolve in order to support the evolution of the company and the new business models. We realized that just selling goods is no more a competitive advantage. We also saw it in the first presentation by Richard this morning. So actually, as a retailer, we also have big ambitions around the new business models like circularity, subscriptions, rental services. We have our own Second Life product in store. You can bring your used items and you get cash back into your pocket. Also, we offer rentals, repairs in stores, and then on Decathlon France now you can buy your next hiking trip in Chamonix. So imagine that Decathlon needs to support all these customer needs and do it at scale and do it online and do it in store. So it's for these reasons that a few years ago we decided to invest in building our own internal payments platform. We have our own payment orchestration platform in-house to basically scale faster across multiple countries and different business models. In the past, we had a very segregated approach where each of these countries had their own checkout and payment integrations. And this is how we ended up with 60 PSPs integrations and 80 payment methods. Obviously, this was not scalable and also very costly.
Yeah, makes sense, and I think that geographic scope being so varied and those differences is going to be a theme that comes out of this again and again as a sort of key challenge, but also a key opportunity in terms of how you optimize that. So we've already touched on this a little bit, but much is being made of alternative payments and using different payment methods, account-to-account payments, for example, in a lot of different markets. How important are these to your checkout strategy, and how do you choose which methods are going to be impactful to that user journey? Maybe, Ruani, if we start with you.
Yeah, sure. So, no, it's not a competition, but when I was at Amadeus Payments, we actually integrated 400 different acquirers and APMs. And obviously, obviously with Amadeus, we were in the travel and hotel industry, so truly, truly global merchants. I think sometimes there's a big misconception from some of the larger merchants in North America and Europe that everyone uses cards, which is obviously not true. And I learned a lot about digital wallets in Asia. And we had to learn really deeply to actually service our merchants in the US and Europe about why it was so different to cards and what the different customer experience was. And I think echoing Jacob's point, it is really got to do with the customer experience and the customer need. And really deeply understanding your customers, but understanding where the merchants also want to service. So if there's an American airline that wants to service in Asia, you have to really push forward for and really understand the local payment methods in Asia. I think the second thing as well to influence APMs, and also there's a difference between APMs and LPMs. Alternative payment method is something different to cards, so direct debit, for example, for recurring transactions. LPM is a local payment method that is really used by local customers, such as Grab Pay in Singapore. And that's a key distinction. In order to influence different usability of the payment methods, loyalty, I think, comes into play. So in Amadeus, we actually did tests with some airlines if you provide extra loyalty points to use a different payment method to card, because essentially the merchant's saving on the merchant services fee, and that could fund cashback or loyalty points as well.
Can I briefly add to that? So I think we're only 300 integrations, so not quite 400, but Amadeus is one of them, to be fair. But I think the APM piece is really well, because I think people often think of, oh yeah, well, will I add these additional payment methods and therefore more is better, whatever else. But in fact, the reality is that a lot of merchants and indeed a lot of banks use aggregators for this purpose, right? And in fact, the aggregators themselves are then offering you, the merchant, a different customer experience than where you integrated directly. And that can be a settlement speed, it can be a cost, delta, so on and so forth. So I think to Jacob's point again, like in order to really, it's not enough to just say, I'm going to offer these local payment methods. You actually need to offer them in a way that they are comparable, if not superior to what the consumer already does, right? So it's no point saying, okay, I'm going to pay with a local account-to-account method, and I'm going to get it, settled within 2 days, which is often the case if you go through an aggregator. So anyway, my point being, there's also some technical considerations here, as opposed to just a laundry list of local methods that you may or may not select from.
These technical considerations and legal considerations.
Absolutely, yes.
As our earlier panel mentioned as well. Like legal considerations for an A2A payment versus a card payment. Wow. And my background is normally card payments, and I went into A2A, I was like, oh my gosh, this is even more difficult.
Yeah.
So I think having a really strong legal team as well is really important.
Yeah.
And I think from the retailer perspective, especially like IKEA, right, when we ship physical goods, it's really important to understand that payment and the payment methods are deeply integrated into logistics and actually, how you ship that product, right? For example, we talk here about digital payments, but the reality is that in Eastern Europe, cash on delivery is still probably one of the most popular payment methods. I don't know if anybody here is from Poland, Romania, but still this is a very popular payment method, and while for the providers it's maybe just another method to sell in a list, for merchants it can become really complex, especially when you sell marketplace products like Decathlon also does. You need instant confirmation of payment, otherwise you're exposing yourself to risk. So yeah, the landscape is still very fragmented. I think still within Europe, you have Western Europe and Eastern Europe.
Absolutely. Yadari, Jacob, any thoughts here?
Well, the only thing I would add is that there's also a cart personalization part, more than just the customer, because it does change if you're buying a couch that costs 2,000 euros versus buying something that is 20 euros. So we don't want to give the same payment method in accordance to what you're buying too.
Nothing for me. I was going to try and compete on the integrations we've done, but I don't think I'm there.
Okay, great. And a topic that's already come up and I think is vital to checkout success is loyalty. Loyalty being absolutely central to how a lot of retailers are approaching the checkout experience. With that in mind, how can we get payments and loyalty to intersect in a really valuable way? And how can retailers enable greater customer loyalty through payments? And can embedded loyalty play a role in that? And Madalena, if you could take us away here.
Yeah, I think that's a topic also closer to my topic at Decathlon. Obviously, for Decathlon, loyalty is a very competitive landscape because we not only compete with other sports brands like Adidas or Nike, but also we compete with marketplaces like Amazon. So customers are actually educated for this instant gratification and seamless experience, but on the other hand, companies and brands need to fund the loyalty program and optimize for ROI. Also, what we know from multiple researches is that customers are not only interested in the reward themselves, but also how these rewards are delivered to them in the most personalized way. And I think this is actually the topic that connects with payments, right? If you think about the loyalty flywheel to attract, engage, and redeem, payments can be embedded at each steps of the flywheel. And yeah, obviously at Decathlon, if we want to engage with inactive customers or attract new customers, we give them a reward, a prepaid reward, and direct them to in-store or online. But we see also with top loyal customers, right? For them, cashback is not enough. They want personalized experiences. And that is also the reason why at Decathlon we don't want to position loyalty as just a cashback mechanism. Our prices are already very competitive on the market. So we want to position loyalty as something that accompanies you throughout your entire sports journey. So you can connect your sports app to Decathlon account and earn points, and then you can also redeem those points on sport activities or a discount on your e-bike subscription. So I think that's like where the trade-offs are.
I think just to add to that, I think it was Sue that mentioned in the earlier panel that loyalty is not just points and cashback, it's actually loyalty to the brand, which is exactly what you've mentioned. And I think that's probably what's really important, because I think some people think loyalty is just membership rewards points at American Express, but it's actually a beautiful brand, ties customers into the Amex brand. And what I found when working, well, I have a bit of background in loyalty as well, when we went to merchants, the marketing team was quite separate to the payments team. So the marketing teams are the ones that are actually funding these rewards or cashbacks or points, but the payments teams are trying to, reduce their card costs by, influencing customers to go to direct debit or a different APM, a cheaper APM such as open banking. If these two departments actually spoke to each other, hey, if we are offered open banking and saved, 2-3%, that can actually fund the cashback and the rewards. And I think that's an ecosystem.
The missing part, yeah, exactly. That's indeed what we're experiencing, how to break the silos of the organization. Because also what we've seen in the industry, right, loyalty programs like Starbucks or McDonald's, where you earn a free burger, they are successful because payments and marketing and loyalty are seamlessly integrated together.
Also, there is a thing with loyalty where we give the customer an extra step to tell us who they are. So if we made a better job to be able to recognize them, and in payments we have so much information that we are able to pinpoint who is buying, where they're buying, and then give them their rewards without their extra friction of them identifying, like I'm me and I'm your customer, which is normally with, in IKEA, is the family card where we ask them to log in and tell us who they are, when we already can know who they are before they even tell us.
Just to add to that, I think we have a question on agentic commerce, I can never say the word. How can the agent know it's me as a customer? Like, how do I enter my loyalty program? Like,
Well, I think this is one of the key points. I was thinking along the same lines, which is, as you say, loyalty to an IKEA brand, Decathlon brand, in person makes sense, right? You're going into the store and so on. But as soon as it's online, and then as soon as it's potentially disintermediated from an agentic commerce perspective, you've suddenly got a bit of a challenge. So I think we can probably get into agentic. It's already a very hot topic today, but I do think it's one of the reasons why we're going to, well, perhaps it's not going to be quite the future that some people are predicting.
Yeah, and I think that from my perspective, that definitely makes sense in terms of there is that personal touch and that loyalty relationship with brands. And actually, as a retailer, how do you maintain that? But as a customer, there's value to that as well. And how then, if you completely sort of surrender that decision-making process to that AI agent, then again, how does that work? How do you then maintain that relationship with that retailer? So I think that's an element to loyalty that we're going to have to think about going forward and what that looks like.
Let's get into it, right? Because I do think, Richard mentioned this morning, I thought it was an interesting statistic around the, Walmart have announced their OpenAI or ChatGPT specifically integration, right? And I think this statistic is already about 20%. Now that's a little bit different, right? Because you're in ChatGPT, you're being directed effectively to an instant checkout within Walmart, right? So Walmart are continuing to maintain the relationship. I do not know, but I could probably guess the commercial terms of that arrangement, by which I mean Walmart are getting ahead of the curve here. They've probably got a very favorable commercial relationship with ChatGPT, whereby they're now forcing their competitors to cut probably less favorable deals with ChatGPT, whereby they continue to maintain their cost advantage, if you know what I mean, right? So this kind of LLM facilitated checkout, I think, is one thing, because I could see a Decathlon, IKEA, if they so please, of course, they could integrate with some of these chats and LLMs as well. But that's still you owning the experience, the brand. So that's, I think, the way I at least disentangle this is, like, that's just kind of another checkout in the same form that you might have an accelerated checkout through a search engine, whatever else. That's different. I think when we talk about agentic commerce, which we could potentially get into, that's a little bit different now. Well, I should say very different, right? Because now, in theory, you've got an agent acting autonomously on your behalf, and they will be agnostic as to brand. They will optimize based on preferences, be it price, location, whatever else. And now suddenly you've lost that customer relationship, and therefore we're already seeing a lot of large brands begin to, put up the walls from a crawler perspective, from an AI. So, I think there's quite a bit of detail we could get into that. And I should say, by the way, we are involved, along with Adyen and a bunch of others, in the Google Agentic Payments Protocol, right, the AP2 initiative. We're also, so MasterCard are a key component of that, which I'll talk about in a moment. We're also, I don't think we've quite announced it yet, but we're also involved in the Visa Intelligent Commerce Agentic Protocol piece. So a lot of this is honestly just discovery and trying to figure some of this stuff out. But the way we view the world, at least in this space, is, in fact, these aren't really technical challenges. Technically, it's all, somewhat straightforward. It's in the grand scheme of payments, it's all about regulatory, security, compliance, effectively, right? So that's what Visa, Master, Google, and others are trying to figure out. Well, where does the liability sit? Where does what's the scheme, security associated with this, and so on? And I think that's what we're working on at the moment. But ultimately, the decision makers, as far as I'm concerned, or ultimately those most affected, will be the big brands. And then therefore, it's a question for Decathlon, IKEA, and folks of that nature to decide, well, what is our role going to be in a supposed agentic autonomous payment flow? Because maybe there's upside in terms of additional flows, but there's definitely potential downside as well.
Yeah, and I think that's also like a question that all the merchants and retailers are asking themselves, right? And we see clearly that agentic commerce can really optimize for product search and for price, right? But when it comes to brand, that's still an impact that we have to assess. Yeah. And we know that different providers, right, they are updating their flows to support the agentic commerce, but there is still a lot of unclarity on the merchant side in terms of actually what problem is this solving in the value chain for us, besides the tools that were already mentioned, and also how can we first understand the demand that is out there? Can we even detect how much traffic is available on agentic commerce so that I can actually make a business case to my leader to actually prioritize this for next year, right? Yeah. And then the other part is how can we hook into this infrastructure on the merchant side without re-engineering our whole checkout flow, so we can actually test with agility.
Can we touch on that bit a little bit? Because I do think the size of the market is still a little bit of an unknown as well, right? Everyone's running around talking about agentic, typically consultants. I'm an ex-consultant, I don't mind saying it. Everyone's saying this is the next big thing, et cetera. But I don't think anyone has quite quantified the target addressable market here. And what I mean by that is, like, in theory, yes, and Richard, I'm gonna pick on you again. Like you mentioned at the start, you'd be happy for your car insurance to an agent to autonomously renew that, assuming you set a ceiling and so on. Actually, there's a couple of challenges with that, even if you think about it at a personal level. Like, would you really be happy with that? Well, how do you know you're getting the best possible result? Well, you don't, right? Because it's done autonomously. Where does the liability sit in half this stuff, right? The decision is being made, in theory, autonomously on your behalf. So this is where I talk about this kind of scheme compliance. The reason we're working with Visa, Master, and so on is to figure out, well, who's responsible as and when the edge cases go wrong here? So I would say, just to echo the point, like, how much of consumer spending actually lends itself to truly autonomous decision-making? I think that is yet to be determined, and my own personal intuition is it's a little bit smaller than we are being sold right now, for some of the reasons mentioned.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
Just to add in terms of liability, that's, as an issuer, that's what keeps me off.
Yep.
Like, when Richard mentioned 20% of Walmart's transactions are agentic commerce, I was on Slack straight away speaking to my issuing team. I was like, how do we know these transactions are coming from an agent? Is it a different POS data code? Or I personally don't know. I will find out.
No, but to be clear, that's not an agent. That's my point. That's actually just an LLM straight through from ChatGPT.
Okay,
so it's not autonomous. You, the consumer, is still clicking, instant checkout. It's a card payment, effectively.
Okay, and then if it's an agent?
That's exactly the point. So nobody has solved for that yet.
I did see WorldPay have partnered with Trulio. Did you see that? The digital identity company.
Okay.
So Trulio normally do KYC, but there was a press release a few weeks ago that they do KYA, Know Your Agent.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, who are we actually doing KYC on though? Like, I don't understand how that works.
Is anyone aware, and I will throw it out to the audience, is there any actual live implementations of autonomous payment today?
Visa just launched today the AI agent identifier. It's got its flaws. I still think it needs tokenization to, really pull away the identity of the individual and verify that there's actually a human that's authorized that prior to going through. I think they've solved the point in terms of how an agent is identified and authorized, but without the tokenization, it kind of sits down. I mean, I was literally just reading it on the train on the way here today, so, I'm still navigating it, but for me, I think it's flawed because Visa will automatically always try to make money out of the data. So if they're going to make money out of the data, they can't have the tokenization because it stops them from doing it, because it'll be a third-party application, or wrap, should I say, a digital ID wrap. I think it's a step in the right direction. but I think there's some flaws or maybe some add-ons that need to be in there.
I mean, we might actually be involved in that. I haven't seen that press release. But I do think, to my knowledge, no one today, end consumer today is authorizing an agent to autonomously purchase on their behalf, right? Outside of proof of concepts and so on and so forth, right? So I think that's going to be, there's still a lot to figure out, I guess. But for me, the interesting thing is the large merchants, right, and how they solve for it.
I think in terms of the liability point, I always use the analogy of autonomous vehicles. The technology's been there for years.
Yeah.
You know, my car's got the sensors. It needs to come pick me up at the train station when I get off the train. That all exists. The problem is the liability and the regulation around what happens if it crashes into a wall.
Yeah.
Who pays to
Your
rebuild that wall?
insurance definitely doesn't cover that.
Exactly, and that's the bit we're exploring in payments at the moment. It's not the technical capability. You can tokenize it, you can use an API.
Yeah.
That is all doable from a technical point of view. It's the liability of what happens if it goes wrong, and the concept of, do we want this? Those are the bits I think we're all struggling with at the moment, and I think it'll take a while to resolve that. But
I think Mandalina, touched on the fact, what need is it solving? What problem is it actually solving from a merchant's perspective? It'd be really good to understand from your point of view.
Well, I wanted to say the do we want this? The customer is going to want it, so there is a part of us that has to adapt and find a way of how we can live as a merchant and still have our branding out there when purchases are happening so seamless without a place yet that we can see that the IKEA brand or the Catalan brand exists.
of course. And one thing to sort of segue slightly, I think that is deeply related to any use of AI is having the right data and making sure that you have those data capabilities in place. With that in mind, I think, Jacob, if you could lend your views here, how big a role is getting the right data playing in optimizing that checkout experience, and how important is it going to be to things like these future developments?
Yeah, I mean, I won't necessarily lend to AI and agentic commerce in this. I'll probably talk about the here and now. I mean, we, as an abstraction layer away from multiple downstream PSPs, see data in acceptance as all important. The reality is, if any merchant or any aggregator in this room has integrated with more than one PSP, you will see that there are significant differences between what data they require to ensure that the acceptance rate and the conversion rate is as expected. We, for example, recently ran an A/B test with a client. They were seeing 1% extra acceptance rate with no difference in fraud between PSP1 and PSP2. They launched a full scale, why is this happening, what is going on? And ultimately, it was that PSP2's subtle nuance was that they wanted the street name and the house number on separate line items, whereas the other PSP would take it as a string. And that was causing significant challenges with their AVS and ultimately causing a performance decrement downstream. So how important is data? Well, first and foremost, transmitting the right data at the right time is all important in a seamless checkout experience, because ultimately that's going to directly impact conversion. And then I think the second part is that ensuring you have the right data that's very accessible in either a warehouse or some form of BI capability is also all important, because you have to do after the fact analysis. So this customer came with this expectation to purchase this, and this did not happen. Well, why not? What can we see in the data? If you've got data accessible, you can ultimately make changes at the front end or indeed in your back end processes to ensure that it does happen, in my opinion.
To add to that as well, from an issuer perspective, I'm not sure if people are aware, but issuers, such as ourselves, we do actually work with merchants and acquirers to ensure the data is flowing correctly, to actually increase authorization rates. So if you're a merchant and getting frustrated to see a large subset of customers that are issued by a specific bank, reach out to your scheme or the scheme that issues that card and speak to them to then contact your issuer to actually increase the authorization rates. We are likely to work with the merchant directly and the acquirer, because we want to make sure that our customers are also getting the right customer experience and that they can actually transact at the point of sale at their favorite merchants.
Yudari, any perspectives from the retail side?
We talked about the data to the PSPs, and they're all different. We do a great job of transmitting to each PSP the data that they need in the right format. But for us, I don't know if anyone has experienced this, data is work. Like it took us the same amount of time to develop a new feature than to figure out how to figure out if this feature is actually valuable or not. So we actually focused, took a step, a breather, and are actually focusing on how we can make it seamless and easy to extract data without having to build something new or taking months to actually build that abstraction. As Jacob mentioned, that we want A/B tests to be easy, not a new feature that takes months. We want to be able to look at analysis and look at acceptance rates without having to extract data manually and create a spreadsheet and figure that out. So it's part of our priority, in addition to, which we think at the end will add to consumers, because it actually reduces, if we see the data, we could actually reduce fraud. We could actually see what is working or not working in the checkout and make changes quicker into our experience, it be in store or it be online.
Can I add a point so fully agree with what Jacob is saying right around, and again, we kind of provide orchestration services as well to some large clients. But actually almost downstream of that as well, the point around kind of data integrity from the payment service providers themselves, right? And I see Adyen as a sponsor, so I'll give them a shout out, right? Adyen have pretty much as good as it gets when it comes to the granularity of the payment information provided to the merchants, right? So we do something called kind of cost observability, optimization. You go into a large merchant, they have 10, 20, 30 PSPs. The Adyen granularity is, as I say, as good as it gets, and then it kind of, gets worse, depending on who the provider is, depending on the region. You have some PSPs in Southeast Asia who give you a PDF at the end of every month type thing, right? So it kind of gets to that point. Now, in reality, it's working with across these multiple providers. You're kind of enabling the merchants to push back and say, in fact, this is the level of information we need in order for you to process on our behalf. And then on any given transaction, on any given day, you can see what the cost components should be and what you're actually paying, right? And given the, I will say, unending scheme fee updates and so on and so forth, this is not a static point in time consultancy arrangement, right? This is actually a kind of a productized version of maintaining that kind of cost control. So I think the data from what Jacob said at the very top all the way downstream to the very bottom is always a challenge, even for the largest merchants.
Brilliant. I think we've just about got time if there's a single question.
Better be a good one.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just on is agentic commerce being powered anywhere? With Stripe launching on Etsy. So at the minute with ChatGPT, you can go onto Etsy and you can purchase. And from the data standpoint, what we're finding is a lot of it is on the actual agentic tool. All these pro subscriptions are already there with the data, rather than it kind of being on the PSP to provide the data.
Sorry, so maybe just to clarify, my point is around the autonomous payment piece. Absolutely, there's a lot of integrations into LLMs and chats and so on, and but please do correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think anyone today is autonomously making payment on behalf based on rules set by the end consumer, right? So I totally get the integrations piece, and I think we can kind of speak to that in whatever level of detail, but I'm not sure the scheme rules are in place for you yourself to say, okay, agent, go off in the background and make all of these payments on my behalf, and the only time I'll know about it is when I get a notification or the money is debited from my account. By the way, that is happening in POCs we're involved in, but it's not happening in the wild to my knowledge.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we've got one, if we could do it very, very quickly, we've got one question here.
Thank you very much for allowing the question. My question is to Ruwani and Madalina. You worked in travel industry before, and right now, travel industry is probably the most complex setup you can ask for. So what do you think retailers should learn from the travel industry? Could be, tokenization or FX related or conversion related. I would like to hear your take.
Yeah, maybe I can start with that because, previously, before Decathlon, I worked at Booking.com, and we're talking about completely different business models and organizations, right? At Booking.com, actually, payments is a huge department. I think there are still people in the room who are working at Booking. And it's digital, right? And when it's digital, it's much easier to have consistency across your platform and build one payments platform in-house. But when you talk about Decathlon, it's a completely different business. For us, yeah, we just develop sports products and we sell them. And actually, the countries own the P&L. And digital is not the business. Digital is an enabler for the country. And in the end, every investment that we make in payments, in platform, in data, it needs to translate into revenue for the country. And that's why it's like very different types of organizations. I think they can learn. And now Decathlon is applying, bringing consistency with the migration of this new payments platform in-house to be able to scale faster.
I know we're running out of time. I think there's two things. One is really, really understand your customer from a local payments method perspective. Actually, probably three things. Resilience, obviously for a very large global merchant with omnichannel experiences. And I know a lot of travel companies don't have omnichannel, and I think that's how, as a travel merchant, you can definitely be quite different and differentiate. And in order to do that is probably partnering with a good orchestrator as well.
Perfect.
Is it time for a quick
Ooh,
one?
There we go. Okay, a mic has appeared.
Yeah, this is probably for Madalena again, because coming from loyalty background myself, pulling it back to customer experience, usually loyalty gift is associated with the emotional connect. How do you then see the personalized checkout experience adding joy and relevance to that?
Yeah, I think that's a topic that's always a work in progress, and it's not just about the checkout online, where it's much easier to identify the customer, right, and understand about their behavior and the journey. I think the true challenge is when we talk about omnichannel and how to actually identify correctly the customer in store. And I would say, from our perspective as a retailer, in store is not just about what the customer sees as self-checkout, because he already put things in his basket, he just wants to get out of the door as quickly as possible. Loyalty is also about equipping the team member in store with the right mobile tools to be able to quickly understand who you are as a customer and how to help you in the right way. And I think that's where loyalty plays a role in the omni world and the retailer.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, I think that's it, but just thank you to the panel. It's been a great session.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Are you energized? Are you inspired? Have you learnt a lot? It's been really good, this session, really interactive as well, which has been great. So we have half an hour's break now. So all of the people on the stage and people before them, please go and find them, have a chat, see how you can connect and network, and we'll see you back in half an hour for embedded finance, open banking and integrated payments. Thank you, everyone.